Hey, let's bring all of this to our political panel. Julian Epstein is the former Democratic Counsel for the House Judiciary Committee. And Terry Holt also joins us today, a Republican strategist and former senior advisor to Speaker John Boehner. I can ask either of you this, but I'll begin on the Democratic side on the Haley question with Julian, because I've had some Democrats say that indeed, yeah, they don't like that matchup. Might never get as far as being Haley versus Biden, but they don't like it. What do you think of a Haley v. Biden matchup in the general?
Well, if Democrats are being honest with you, Connell, they would say they're terrified of that matchup. If you look at the numbers, she's winning by that kind of margin, not just in that poll, but in several polls, because she's winning with independent voters. She's winning with the crossover voters, people who voted for Biden but would cross over to vote Republican. Most importantly, she's winning with women. With women overall, she is winning by about 4 to 5 percentage points. After everything we've heard about abortion, she's winning the women's vote. If you look at non-college educated women, she's winning by about 65 to 35. I mean, Democrats are terrified of this matchup. If Republican primary voters were smart, that's who they'd put up.
But doesn't look like they will. I mean, if you look at the Des Moines Register poll, everybody always makes a big deal out of this poll every time, every cycle when it comes out. And it's out today, 51 Trump, 19 DeSantis, 16 Haley. Of course, this is just Iowa, Terry, but, you know, across the board, Donald Trump still has not just a commanding lead, but a more commanding lead than he had a few months ago. So the idea of us ever getting to that matchup we discussed seems like a long shot. Is it possible? What do you think?
Well, his support is wide and deep. It stretches across America in Republican circles. He is the front runner. There's no question about it. There are a sizable number of people yet to be had, and Haley still has a chance to be a strong second place, which I think she's hoping that polls like this Wall Street Journal poll rocket her into a position where she can talk about Donald Trump one-on-one, where she's not fighting for the party attention in these debates anymore, but she's taking the message straight to Donald Trump. And I think that's what's going to be necessary if she's going to soften his stronghold on the Republican primary voter.
You talk about how wide his support is, how far it stretches, and you're right. It does bring us to another topic today that's in the news that I think is interesting. Kevin McCarthy's on his way out as a member of Congress, already having been removed as Speaker. He still apparently supports President Trump, but he did say some interesting things over the weekend in an interview. And the headline here is that America doesn't want retribution from Trump. McCarthy going on to say what President Trump needs to do in this campaign. It needs, he says, to be about rebuilding, restoring, renewing America. Can't be about revenge. I'll go this time to you first, Terry, on Kevin McCarthy's message. But by the way, he's still on the so-called Trump train, even with all of that. But what do you make of what he's saying?
Well, I think Kevin McCarthy's messaging is pretty good and would have resonance with Republican primary voters if that's what the message was coming out of Donald Trump. But they're hearing a lot of other different things from Trump, and it's not that unifying positive message. No. They're hearing authoritarian, they're hearing very negative sentiments about other people in the race, how America is in decline. There's no bright, shining moment of hope and optimism coming out of the Trump campaign. So Kevin McCarthy is sort of left with this vision for what a message should be, but no vessel to pour it into. He made a very conventional decision to choose Trump. Trump is obviously the headliner in the race right now, but I think at this stage, McCarthy is more interested in what his position is going to be post-Congress than who he's going to support in the election.
Right. Could be dependent, though, on, depending on what he gets into on President Trump, if he's indeed the president. Now, goes into the earlier point with you, Julian, as terrified as you say as the Democrats might be of the matchup with Haley. You know, the Trump matchup still is not polling well now, but the types of things that we're talking about, I would suppose, would be why you would prefer that matchup of all the rest.
Well, we would, and I think you have to say today that Trump is not just a front runner in the Republican primary; he's a front runner in the general.
Yeah.
But Kevin McCarthy, and I agree with Terry, is right. American voters don't want to be on a retribution tour because it isn't about them. Trump has a much easier message if he would just, not that he's going to listen to advice from a Democrat, but if he would just go back to Ronald Reagan and ask the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I mean, on the economy, most voters think the economy has been pretty bad. Most voters have actually lost income under the Biden economy when you factor in inflation and certainly when you factor in the impact of interest rates. So the economy has not been good for most voters.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.